All right, so we are going to move into Chapter 2, Lesson 3, which is all about percents and decimals. So the last couple of lessons, we worked with fractions and percents and trying to change them into, and also fractions and decimals. So now we're going to be working with just the percents and decimals. So starting on the real world link on page 109, so this is on page 109, a recent survey tells the favorite subjects of students at Martin Middle School. So we have math is 28%, art is 16%, science is 21%, English is 13%, social studies is 15%, and other is 7%. So it says write a fraction with a denominator of 100 to represent the percent of each subject. So we talked about in the last lesson that all percents are out of 100. So all we have to do is put these numbers in our numerators. Those are our percents. It's 28% out of 100. So it's going to be 28 out of 100 for math. Art, it's going to be 16. Science, 21. English, 13. Social studies, 15. And other was 7. So it says write each fraction from exercise 1 as a decimal. So to do that, since we know this is in the hundredths position, so we talked about that in lesson 1 when we talked about from going from fractions to a decimal and back and forth. Okay, since it's in the hundredths position, it's 0.28, 0.08. Okay, now science, it's 21 hundredths, and like I said before, you don't have to put the 0 there. You can if you want. Okay, art, 16 hundredths. Social studies, 15 hundredths, 0.15. English, 13 hundredths, 0.10 or 13. Now 7 hundredths is not 0.7. It's not that. Okay, it's 0.0 because we don't have a tens place. 7 hundredths. Okay. Now, if you look back at exercise 2 here, and it says compare the decimals to the percents. Guys, if you look, all these fractions and these decimals here, all they are is the numerator goes into your decimal just like that, since it's in the hundredths position. That's what makes it so easy. That's why I always try to tell you to get a 10, 100, or 1,000 on the bottom. In this case, with percents, we're talking about hundredths position because it's all percents are out of 100. So now let's go on to page 110. So 110 here, okay, we're going to write percents as decimals first. Okay, so to do this, they're going to give you a percent. Know that it's all out of 100, or you can just divide, and we know that all numbers have a decimal after it. It's just we don't have to write them. Since it's a whole number, we know that all whole numbers are in front of a decimal. We don't actually have to do that. If we're dividing by 100, you just move the decimal to the left twice. So if you want to go from a percent to a decimal, so percent to a decimal, you literally take 48%, move the decimal to the left twice. 0.48, 48 hundredths. Okay, there is another method. Like I said, you just turn it into a fraction and you have your number. So 56% as a fraction would be 56 over 100. Okay, since it's 56 over 100, we know that it's 56 hundredths. So that would be 0.56. 56 hundredths. Or the other method is actually dividing by 100 and just moving the decimal to the left twice. So if we have 56%, okay, we know that all whole numbers have a decimal after it. If I'm dividing by 100, there's 2 zeros there, 2. Okay, that's why I move this decimal twice. 1, 2. 0.56. Same answer, 2 different methods. I do not care which method you use. They mean the same thing. It's just this one is just a little extra smaller because you're taking out an extra step. Because all you're doing is dividing by 100 and moving a decimal point. Okay? Okay, same thing for example number 2. 8%. Well, if we do the fraction way, it'd be 8 over 100, which means 8 hundredths, which is just 0.08. Or you can move the decimal twice. So all whole numbers, so 1, 2. Okay, we have a problem here. This is an empty spot. Okay, when you have an empty spot like this, it's called annex a 0. You just add a 0 there. So 0.08, just like we did here. Same answer, 2 different methods. I do not care which method you use. So when you start with a percent, you are dividing by 100. You're making it decimal. So that's percent to a decimal. So now we have 2%. I'm going to do 2 over 100. Okay, well that's 2 hundredths, 0.02. Or I can move the decimal twice again. 1, 2, 0.02, 2 hundredths. Okay, it's the same thing. So that's when you start with a percent. They give you a percent, and then they want you to go to a decimal. So let's jump over a couple pages to page 113. So we're going to do number 1, number 2, and number 4 together. Okay, so number 1 was 35%. So I'm going to do this one the decimal way, or the fraction way. So we know that all percents are out of 100. So 35 over 100. Okay, now that I know it's 35 over 100, 35 hundredths. 35 hundredths. And you can add the 0 there. You do not have to. I'm not going to mark you off for that. There's nothing wrong with not putting a 0. It's just an extra thing for you down the road that helps you in the long run. Okay, so now number 2. So we have 2%. I'm going to do this the dividing by 100 way, moving the decimal. So I have 2%. Remember, all whole numbers have a decimal afterwards. So we go 1, 2, because I move it to the left twice. The empty spot, you add a 0. So 0.02. 2 hundredths. Okay, number 4. 95%. So I'm gonna do it both ways on this one. So 95 over 100. I have 95% over here, decimal after it. So we know that we move this twice. We know that's 95 hundredths, so 0.95. 95 hundredths. Guys, that's all you have to do here. You're turning a percent into a decimal. So let's go back. On page 110, I want you guys to do A, B, and C. Okay, A, B, and C. So pause the video, change 32% into a decimal, 6% into a decimal, and 93% into a decimal. So pause the video, come back, and we'll go through it together. All right, now that you're back, let's go ahead and do letter A. So 32%. So I'm going to do it moving the decimal way. 1, 2. 0.32. 32 hundredths. Okay, 6%. I'm going to do this over the fraction. 6 over 100. 6 hundredths. 0.06. And it's not 0.6. That's 6 tenths. Do not forget that. You have to put that one there, because if you don't, it's going to be wrong. So then move it twice. 1, 2, 93 hundredths, 0.93. And those are your 3 answers. Okay, so that is how you change a percent to a decimal. Now we're going to switch it up a little bit, and we're going to do the decimals as percents. So rather than dividing by 100, we're multiplying by 100. So we're not going to take the decimal to the left this time. Since we're starting with the decimal, we're taking it to the right. So once again, writing the decimal as a percent. Method number 1, you can put it into a fraction. Okay, since it's 38 hundredths, we know it's 38 over 100. Well, all percents are out of 100, so 38%. Or you can just move the decimal twice. So 1, 2, 38%. But this time it goes to the right because we're going from a decimal to a percent. So we're multiplying by 100. So you got to remember that. When you go from decimal to percent, multiply by 100. When you are going from percent to decimal, you divide by 100. Okay, it's different. So you got to pay attention to that. All right, so example number 5 here. We have 0.2 written as a percent. Okay, so if we did this the fraction way, that's going to be 2 tenths. That's not what we need. Percents are not out of 10. We got to get 100 on the bottom. So what you're going to have to do is multiply by 10. So we get 20 over 100, which means 20%. Or you can just move the decimal twice to the right by multiplying it by 100. So if I had 0.2, 2 tenths, 1, 2. Remember, that's empty spot, you add a 0. 20%. All right, let's go over to page 113 again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do 5, 7, and 9. And 10, actually. No, I'm not going to do 9. We're going to save 9 for later. So 5 and 7. So number 5 is 22 hundredths. So the first time I'm going to write this as a fraction, 22 out of 100. Because 22 hundredths, so 22 over 100. Well, we know percents are all out of 100, so all we have to do is 22%. Do not forget the percent sign. We're talking about percents here, so you have to label accordingly. Okay, number 7, we have 0.1, 1/10. Okay, if I multiply this by 100, that means you're moving this decimal point twice. Okay, this empty spot here means you annex a 0. You add a 0 there. 10%. Guys, that's all you're doing in this. Okay, you're making a percent into a decimal, and then vice versa, a decimal into a percent. That's the goal today. Okay, so now I want you to go back to page 111, and I want you guys to do D, E, and F. So you're changing these decimals into a percent. Okay, use either method. I don't care which method you use, whatever is easiest for you. So go ahead and pause the video, do those, and come back. Okay, now that you're back, let's do the letter D, E, and F together. So letter D, we have 47 hundredths. So I'm going to put 47 over 100. Okay, well, that would be 47%. Okay, same thing for here. So since this is a decimal and I'm changing it to a percent, I'm multiplying by 100. So the other method is to move the decimal 2 times to the right. 1, 2, 73%. Now letter F, I'm going to do the fraction way. So this is 5/10. Okay, well that doesn't work because remember, all percents are out of 100. So I'm going to multiply this by 10. Whatever you do the bottom, you got to do the top. So 50 over 100, which is 50%. So that's all you have to do here, guys. Okay, on the next page, it just shows you a story problem. Nothing changes. So in this case, they want you to write the decimal as a percent. So we have 4/10, and they want you to change it to a percent. So I'm going to multiply it by 100. 1, 2, annex 0, 40%. Nothing changed there on the story problem. It's the same thing, guys. So all you're doing, so after you get done watching the video up to this point, I want you guys to go ahead and by yourselves do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. So 1 through 7 on page 112. I want you to do this right now. Pause the video and come back. We're going to go through these together because they'll be very quick. So go ahead and pause the video, do 1 through 7, and then come back. All right, now that you've done 1 through 7, so I'm going to do every which way a different way. So number 1, 27%. So we're making these percents into a decimal. So now we're dividing by 100. Percent to decimal, we divide. So I'm going to do this one the fraction method. So 27 over 100, well, that's 27 hundredths. 0.27, 27 hundredths. Okay, number 2, I'm going to do it the division way. So I'm dividing by 100. So I'm taking the decimal to the left twice. 1, 2, 15 hundredths. And number 4, 4%. So we got 4 over 100. Well, that's 4 hundredths. And that would be your answer. So we made those percents into a decimal. Now we're going from a decimal to a percent. So we start with a decimal here. We need to make this a percent. So 3/10, that's a problem. We don't have 100 on the bottom like we did up here. So we got to change this. We got to multiply by 10 on each one. So we get 30 over 100, which makes this 30%. Okay, I'm going to do this the decimal way. So up here we moved it to the left because we were dividing. Now we're moving it to the right because we're multiplying by 100. So it's 82%. And the last one here. So we have 51 hundredths. I'm going to move the decimal twice to the left or the right because I'm multiplying. So you get 51%. And now number 7. About 7/10 of the human body is water. What percent is equivalent to 7/10? 0.7. Well, we could do it both ways. So 7 over 10, well, we got to change that. So we get 70 over 100. Or we can do it the decimal way where we move it twice. We annex a 0 and you get 70%. So on this, you need to finish up your notes, take your notes, and this is just for B students. Okay, so this is just for the B students because A students got this today in class. So this is just for the B students. All right, so you need to do this and do the IXLs that are assigned.